but also means if your CFO isn't on the front end doing the capital allocation, doing the controls, then you can end up going to bed and waking up next morning and being out of business, because if your AI goes off the reservation, you can have two approaches are a disaster. If you're doing them today, stop immediately. People, AI is not a magic box. It's not like we turned it on, now everything works. Like they'll show you in the businesses that are not AI defensible are on a fuse.
Okay, so welcome everybody to our Fireside Chat. Our guest today is Brad Wolf. Brad, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Brad Wolf is the founder of Wolfpax Consulting. He's spent his career in finance and operations, working with private equity-backed businesses. And now, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Brad, he focuses on how AI is reshaping decision-making and capital allocation.
I spent a decent amount of my time on that. We've been working with 75 portcos on AI and AI-related projects now for a year, especially the last 8 months.
Great. Well, Brad and I have had some interesting back and forths already, so I'm kind of looking to get into it. And what I wanted to start with here, Brad, was one thing that stood out to me as I was finding out a little bit about who you are is your LinkedIn that leads with a statement rather than a CV. And that statement is, AI strategy is a capital allocation problem. So can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, happy to. And you probably have to cut me off because I can go for a long time on this. I really think the CFO function, especially in the age of AI, your CFO function has to take the lead on capital allocation. And then if you look at capital allocation, AI is a capital allocation, and that's going to drive the decisions going forward, including your ROI, et cetera, and controls that you're going to go down that road. If you take that approach, then your business and your CFO will be on the front of the curve, making conscious decisions about what they're doing. If you don't take that approach, you're going to be behind the curve, always reacting to the way the system was set up. And the reason this is so important is prior to the age of AI, I've felt this, and I've been a CFO for 30 years. This is the way I've always been a CFO. But before the age of AI, you could get away with not doing this because the speed was slower. AI and the institution of AI into your organization is gradually collapsing your forecasting, your operation, your business model together. And what that means is you're going to get real-time information, but also means if your CFO isn't on the front end doing the capital allocation, doing the controls, then you can end up going to bed and waking up next morning and being out of business, because if your AI goes off the reservation, you can have incurred tremendous liability, and no one even knows that that was possible. So I'm a big believer that you got to do that. And the 75 portcos that we're using AI in, this is the approach we take. And I can talk to you about organizational setup and how we set it up and why we set it up like this, because we've been trying to figure out in the age of AI, what does the future company look like that's successful?
Interesting. So digging into the portcos, so how do you see that implemented in practice in the portcos, and how do you see it implemented in practice at the fund level? Because those are two different things.
So, they're two different things. Well, I'll tell you how we approached it. About a year ago, I was approached by 3 private equity funds, and they said they wanted me to set up a shared services model, which, in and of itself would be like, okay, that doesn't sound very exciting at all. And they said, we want to set up a shared services model, and then we want to run an AI sandbox next to it and figure out on a lead to cash basis how we should use AI. So we put in Salesforce, NetSuite, Zora, and a data warehouse, revamped a bunch of stuff. We put in our smaller portcos, there are about 17 of them, we put into our shared services model, entire back office, legal, admin, IT, et cetera. So we run the whole thing for them. And we started to try to use AI. For the first 6 months, it was modest improvements. Last 8 months, huge changes in the AI that's available. And we started instituting that. And we institute it in a sandbox and make sure it works. All the controls, corporate governance, asset allocation, deciding when we're going to do it. And we're trying to set up a model so that we learn And then we take those learnings and we roll them out to the other 60 portcos that we have and all future portcos and do that. And here's what we found. AI in the last 8 months has allowed us to cut our expenses on the back office, not just finance, back office, 80%. But we had to add back 40% of that expense. What we did was we ended up taking expense from really what we call the back office and moving it to the front. Because by moving it to the front, AI works really well when you have clean data that's organized in a certain way and it feeds through your machine. So you've got to make sure you're getting clean data. You also have to make sure you have corporate governance controls, the setup in place. And I see people talk all the time about AI and they don't talk about corporate governance. They don't talk about asset allocation. They don't talk about controls. They talk about it as if it's like, oh, we got this cool thing that does something. The
Mhm.
reality is on the front end, you're driving revenue recognition, you're driving payables, you're driving receivables, you're driving all kinds of financial outcomes, legal contracts, liability you're taking on. That if you're not putting your arms around that and understanding that, and you just let your CIO or somebody do this with really great intent and technically very competent, they will have unintended consequences, which could put you out of business. I mean, literally hundreds of millions of dollars of liability almost instantaneously and totally not understood.
Mhm.
Now, if you put the right controls in and you do it, you get great benefits. You also find out what the limitations are with current versions of AI. And so
Mhm.
we've had some success on this. At the fund level, the funds are all about show me the money. We've showed them what we could do and the efficiencies and the risk reductions. They are huge supporters of this. And where with as the models compress, your forecasting business operating models, you're going to go to where you're going to have real-time information. The funds love that. It
Mhm.
also makes it to where it changes every C-level executive in the company, and you have almost real-time accountability. So it's an interesting voyage that we're on. Luckily I have they brought me in to do this specifically, so I have 100% support. And they're not
Mhm.
I'm not trying to convince them. If anything, I'm trying to uh, I want to measure twice and cut once. They read the
Right.
articles, they see people say all these crazy things, and they say we should do that. And I'm like, let's walk through how we do that.
Right.
There's a sequence you have to follow. If you don't follow the sequence, you can do it, but you don't really know what you're going to get on the other side. And that's called. If you want to do that, just go to Vegas. Go to Vegas,
Right.
bet on red, and maybe it comes up red, you'll make a lot of money. If it doesn't, you
Right.
lost everything. And they're smart guys, they get it. So they're more than willing to understand. They still push on stuff. We have experts come in and talk to us about things that they've done that would like to do. So we don't pretend like we have all the answers, but we are actively at a 17 operating portcos using it effectively today on the entire lead to cash process.
Right.
So and that's pretty amazing because that's really over the last 8 months.
Right. So what I'm hearing is, I think where we hear a lot of forward thinkers here in that AI implementation is really a long-term design problem, and a lot of people in sort of version one were focusing on putting spot solutions in place. So when you do this planning long term, where do you start and how do you decide where to start? Because you have to start somewhere. So, how do those long term planning goals, long term planning strategies get applied day to day to start with? Let's focus
Okay.
on the fund level, not the portco level, if we can.
Well, at the fund level, they want to have real-time information so they can get a feedback loop. In order to get
Right.
real-time information, though, you've got to build infrastructure.
Right.
The whole AI conversation, it really breaks into four component pieces. There is an R&D side, development side, which I don't talk about because that's handled by our CTOs, and that's a
Yep.
different animal. I've got a oversight on it, but it's a different animal, so I won't talk about that. The other
Yep.
three that you really are talking about are there three different ways to institute AI. There's the individual level. Hey, we gave everybody a co-pilot or something, and they go out and they experiment, right? The other one
Yep.
is at a department level. Hey, I'm the CFO. I'm going to do this. I'm the CMO. I'm a CRO. I'm going to do a bunch of stuff. And then what I'm talking about is a transformational company-wide approach. And I'll tell you why the first two approaches are a disaster. If you're doing them today, stop immediately.
Okay.
On the individual level, you get the individual, hey, you're going to go out there, write a bunch of prompts and do a bunch of stuff. Okay, great. Those prompts are really directions to the system to do things. Those need to be documented and they need that to be governed in a certain way. Otherwise, it's free for all. And if you think about a company, it's a set of systems and processes. Now you've introduced a system on top of this that is ungoverned, that just is like, hey, we do whatever we want. Very
Right.
bad, very bad, and it's going to cause it doesn't drive efficiency. It doesn't help your workforce because learning that those particular skills I don't think are particularly valuable for a company, and they
Hmm.
have some real downside. But the one that's really, really dangerous, and just I've stopped this at several companies, is a department approach. Because if you take a department approach, every department has now building an AI stack, an AI approach that's
Right.
custom to them.
Right.
AI is compressing the models together. Well,
Right.
now if you have seven departments that are producing all these different things, you've made compressing much, much harder. Instead of having, a handoff from Salesforce to NetSuite, now you have handoffs to all these different people, and you'll go broke trying to get those all to work. Also, you're embedding each one of those departments then wants to embed AI and stuff in their stuff that you're ultimately going to have to rip out. So the
Right.
change management gets harder, not
Right.
easier. And actually, people like there's certain tools they like, certain ways they like of doing stuff. You're better off taking a global view of this at the fund level and the portco level of what do you want to do with AI. And then
Right.
within that context, now you implement. Now, if a department is doing something, they're doing it as part of an overall playbook that fits that I know the plumbing's going to work. All right, I'll use the bridge analogy. I know my bridge. I'm building half my bridge. I know it's going to connect with the bridge or the train analogy. We're building the train tracks from the east to the west. When we meet up, they connect. If you don't do that, you're going to end up with a bunch of plumbing you're going to have to rip out. And also, I think you're going to take a lot of risks that aren't understood, even in the finance side. AI
Right.
is a fascinating phenomenon in that because it's so transformational, people seem to drop that it's completely different than everything else. It is if you've done process engineering work, process improvement work, and you put in systems, I put in about 50 of them. It's the same concepts. It's a different technology. It's much
Hmm.
broader, much different, but it's the
Yep.
same technology. You've got to use those basic blocking and tackling. But I see people out who've abandoned all controls, all the methodology that we've used for the last 30 or 40 years and are going off wildly. And now everybody's an AI expert, right? So
Right.
everybody, wait, I got a card here. I'm an AI expert. You have people running stuff that clearly should not be running stuff.
Right.
Because the reason I know is because I've done 50 of these implementations. You come in, you're like, there's basic processes you follow, and those are going to create major risks for companies and major blowups. I think you're going to see more and more blowups. You won't see them at the lower middle market, but yeah, I see if you'll see some mid-size and large companies are going to have some blowups. You see it right now where they say we eliminated, 10,000 people and then we hired back,
Right.
12,000 people because we couldn't because it didn't work.
Couldn't do it.
And I think that's that, I'm all for speed. I've worked in private equity for 25 years, but speed is you want to go fast. You want to go as fast as you can without cracking up.
Right.
But going fast without the limitation of I've got to get there safely, uh, just means you're gonna it means you're going to Vegas. You're
Yeah.
taking risks that ultimately are going to come back and bite you.
Yeah. Polymarket. You're going to polymarket. Let's update it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's interesting what you say about the departmental approach, because siloed workflows were how things were always done. And when you're building a system that can work across workflows, it's tough for some people who haven't done it to imagine, oh, okay, we can integrate these workflows across rather than having to go up and down the silos every single time we do a piece of work. So, my interesting take there, and I don't know if you agree with me on this. So, actually, I won't give you my take. I'll just say, do you think that that systematized approach with AI, which is the right way to go, reduces the need for people in there, or does it really just change where they add value? Because as you pointed out, change management is probably the hardest part of this in terms of making it stick, having people buy in. So do you think that at the fund level, it really reduces the need for people or just changes where they're adding value?
Well, I'll tell you the approach that we've taken. I think it drives massive efficiency. But the approach we've taken with our employees is we've said we're gonna push AI hard, but we're not gonna have layoffs because of AI.
Right.
Right? So because we don't want them to sabotage it. We want them to be enthused by it. We want them to learn. But when there's attrition, our first we look to say, can we backfill with AI instead of hiring someone? And that
Right.
drives efficiency. The other thing that happens is, does it reduce jobs? Our view is it's going to transform jobs into different functions, but it's also going to open up a lot more revenue streams and profitability that we didn't have before. So the amount of revenue per person, the amount that what people can do is going to be much more. So let's say you have $100 million company and you have 400 people in it. We might in 5 years have a $500 million company and have 100 people in it.
Right.
And but no one's lost their job. You look at that and you say, well, but someone's going to lose their job, right? Our view is that ultimately AI allows you to go after revenue streams, markets, and products that would have been unfeasible in the past. So I think there's going to be an explosion in markets, revenue streams, products, services. And therefore, if you say, I need one human per 100,000 units, and that goes down to I mean, one human per million units. But the number of units being sold now goes from a million to 100 million. Everyone still stays employed.
Right.
It's just the function of the job. Now, the transition to get there, I'm not going to talk about a macro level because that's above my pay grade. But at the fund level, to get people committed, we're committed to them. We're in the lower middle market. So these companies tend to be around 750, 500 employees or less. We're committing, we're not going to fire anybody because of AI. We'll fire you because of
Hmm.
lack of competence. We'll fire you because you didn't do a good job, but
Hmm.
we won't backfill because we're
Hmm.
going to grow our companies and we're going to use AI to help us. And we found that's a much better because we need our employees to be excited about AI. And AI is the future, whether you like it or not.
Right.
So, we want them to be like, okay, I want to learn, I want to get into this, even if my job's going to change. In the shared service model, we move people from the back end to the front end. That was new for them. But what they had was they were used to controls and reconciliations and they understood how the threads came together. So we moved them to the front end. The value of a lot of what they had was still valuable on the front end. They had to learn new
Right.
skills and for them, now you get to see the world. You get to go out there and say, "Oh, I've never been up on the bridge. I've been down in the boiler room my whole career." Now you're up on the bridge and you're thinking, "Oh, I understand what you're trying to do. I understand where you're
Hmm.
trying to go." I think it gives them better career paths and works better. Not everybody wants to do it. If they don't, we try to find other places for them. But no, we are not. We think that it'll drive massive efficiency, but it'll also massive growth, and those will offset. There will be timing differences, though, and I'm talking about lower middle market. At the very large companies, I think they're running a different playbook, and there will be displacements while they get there.
Right. Right. I have a regular conversation. I have a conversation regularly that goes along the lines of the the biggest problem with how in any company, forget about funds or PE backed companies, is you hire internally into the managerial level based on people being good at the job that they're currently doing, which does not necessarily qualify them to be good at the next level. It's an entirely different task. So, with that in mind, how do you think this is going to change hiring at the fund level? And also, what do you think a strong finance team looks like with these tools?
Yeah,
Because I think their job is going to change
yeah.
entirely.
Those are two different questions. First of all, at,
Yeah.
at the at the fund level, the fund level for 20 years up until money was no longer free, had the wind at their back, right? It
Yep.
was free money, a lot of good stuff, so you could get away with some inefficiencies. Funds have been notoriously inefficient. At the end of 25, statistic came out, 80% of CFOs hired by funds don't make it to exit. 70% of CEOs. 40% of all C-level executives don't make it to exit. Those numbers are damning. I mean, they're just
Right.
that, and that's not sustainable, right? That the operational inefficiency to have that much turnover is crazy. So you have to go back and you have to say, if you go to the recruiters and things, they'll say, well, we're going to get you a better candidate, a better candidate. It's obviously not a talent problem. It's a structural problem. And
Right.
AI is exacerbating the structural problem, but giving you the opportunity to revisit it and change it. So I
Right.
think that now you're going to have to change the nature of the jobs. I do think that experience matters. So if you said, I'm a very talented sales executive or marketing executive or CFO, those things are still valuable. The way you do your
Right.
job is going to be different. I think what's going to happen, I want to talk about at a macro level, at the C level, and then I'll talk about the CFO. At a macro
Right.
level, I think as you compress things down, we've had fiefdoms where marketing had its analysts, sales had its analysts, and its, Salesforce and HR and all this other stuff. As those compress, the back office, the infrastructure that supports those functions is going to be run, I think, in our companies, we run it by the CFO. Now, what
Right.
that does is sales is about the go-to-market strategy and getting out and getting the customers, right? It's now really outward looking. Um,
Right.
HR changes dramatically because now you have agents and you have to manage agents, but they're not people. And so that's not really an HR function. That's a finance function. I think contractors and consultants are going to be used more and more because you're going to have projects as opposed to, long term, but you're going to have core employees. So that's going to change. And I could go around the horn on all the C level. I think those change. The CFO goes from if you go back 50 years, the CFO sat there was an accounting uh, department. All your data was in accounting. It was
Hmm.
slow moving. We closed the books. 15 days later, we found out where we were and we got a feedback loop. What's happened over the last 30 years, most of your data is moved upstream. Most of your data is upstream and then comes to finance. And
Right.
because of the speed of transactions, the model of having I'm on the back end and I tell you what happened is no longer acceptable. Your
Right.
your CFO and your finance function generally has to move upstream. It has to be, I think what's going to happen, and we're doing this in all of our portcos, the CRM is now moved into our control structure. What does that
Right.
mean? If you're not a CFO or an accountant, when it moves into control structure, it has all the controls that you have in your ERP and your data warehouse. Now
Hmm.
suddenly your CFO owns the CRM because the
Right.
CRM is a system of record now that's feeding into the ERP and everything else. That removes the CRM, whatever from that. He gets the output, so he can run his sales programs and whatever. But now we've made that a unified system because we think those systems will gradually collapse, just like the models are going to collapse. And so for the CFO, I think you become more strategic. You're going to have to become more strategic. If you're not, I don't think you're going to make it forward looking because you become the the architect of how does the machine work, where are the risks, whatever, here's the data, whatever that's coming out. And then the management team and the sponsors and the board members can all quiz that, right? But
Right.
you're still responsible because you can say, well, the machine just gives you all the answers. If you work with AI, which is being fed by human behavior, I will guarantee you there's anomalies and bad data. So,
Yep.
so someone is going to have to manage that. Even if you're working with a vendor or a customer that is very AI forward, they're sending you stuff in a format that you are going to have to massage to get into your system in a way. Those translation points are going to still need humans in the loop. We found that we actually need more humans in the loop, but they're more strategic. One final point I make, the review for humans in the loop, we don't do our review by saying, oh, you get the report and you look at it and make sure it's right. What we found is AI will be very good at producing stuff. And after you look at it 30 days in a row and it's right every day, you just stop looking at it. Humans
Right.
just like, I give up. We're setting up processes where the humans have a incentive people to go out and query the system, and they look for the anomalies.
Right.
They're going and intellectually challenge to test the system, and that's a much better control point than just reviewing AI output that 99% of the time is right, but that 1% that it's wrong could destroy your company, right?
Right.
And if your humans in the loop have lost the ability to really, I just don't care. It's always the same. you've got to set up a system where they're incentivized to go look for the anomalies, look for the things that are different. And when we have data that comes in that doesn't fit into our AI system, it doesn't go through the AI system. It goes around the AI system because
Right.
until we can get it cleaned up to go in the AI system, if you send in anything in AI that is subject to interpretation or gray, you will have the system hallucinate. And it will hallucinate that you'll only understand it later when you deconstruct, like, why would it have done that? But that doing that could be $100 million blow up, right? So,
Yeah.
so we don't want to do that. So we have about 10% of our deals that don't go through our AI system, go to the back and get manually input into the system. I think over time that'll get to be less. But I caution people, AI is not a magic box. It's not like we turned it on, now everything works, like they'll show you in the demos. That is not the way it works. It is still a system, very, very powerful. It's getting better, but that power also means 1% mistakes are not. We had people that did manual billing, right? If Betty did manual billing and she sent out 50 wrong bills on a Friday because her pivot table was off, that's unfortunate. AI will send out a million wrong bills, right? It because
Mhm.
the force multiplier is so much greater that it takes what would be minor explosions and turns them into nuclear explosions. That's my takeaway. It's very, very powerful. That's good. That's also why you should treat it with great respect because it will kill you if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I should point out that our system will not give you hallucinations, but it's built from the start to be correct in terms of making sure all those equations are correct and everything's laid out. End of pitch. But
Well, but I would say on that, just as support, what we found also, we're using Salesforce and NetSuite and Zora and data warehouse. Um, AI has opened the market up to new AI native tools in a
right,
way that I have not seen in my career. And
right,
and we now explore AI native tools because the reality is those tools are often much, much better.
yeah,
And it's going to allow, and we use some of them. If you're not doing that, if you're still sticking with the tried and true from the past, I think you run the risk of being leapfrogged and leaving money on the table. So I'm a
yeah,
big believer in this too. You still use your same skeptic view of things, but
right,
AI, Salesforce and NetSuite and the big products have the benefit of a huge install base. Their
right,
detriment is their technology is not AI native based, right?
exactly.
And
Yeah,
that's an AI native, over time, or maybe even today, is better.
yeah,
So if you're not looking at it before we had a list, we only looked at our list. We didn't go look at new tools because, who's going to put in a new tool? Today we look at all of them because you
right.
you really have to look at those because I think there's going to be some huge advantages you're going to get from AI native tools.
Right. So I'll go off script a little bit. Here's a question that I'm really interested personally in hearing what you think. I have a bit of an idea in my head that there is a lot of room here for fund admins, corporate services, law firms, accounting firms to take on more of that CFO role, to take on more of the fund level work using AI, and pull back more share of wallet and take a lot of the work off the hands of the people at the funds that they simply don't want to do. Are you seeing anything out in the market
Yeah,
like that? Are
yeah,
you? Yeah,
yeah. I think there's a entire transformation going here. And you mentioned a bunch of things. If you want to just talk about the accounting, every accounting firm out there has announced massive changes, investments.
yeah,
They're totally changing. My feedback is if you're a finance professional, things are going to change, but I actually think that it'll be better. I think you'll have better. Uh, so at the fund level, definitely tracking and doing things. You want to get into legal. Legal is very interesting. At the lower level of legal, massive change, massive efficiency. When you get to
right.
the higher level of legal, I also used to practice law a long time ago. Law is about gray areas. So you have to be
Hmm.
very careful because if the Supreme Court comes out with a decision and everybody agrees, well, that decision means X. I
Yeah,
guarantee you, I can go through that decision and find that Neil Gorsuch or somebody, there's some paragraph or something in there that I can spin it and say, well, that's true, but it was very narrow.
yeah,
They were really only talking about this.
Yeah.
AI does not handle that well at all. AI is a black and white tool. And if you feed in those kind of things into AI, you'll get hallucinations because it doesn't understand that nuanced
Yeah. You have
approach.
to build the interpretations into the framework from the
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just you have to be careful. And I know from lawyers, because I used to practice, is lawyers have used it and gone to court and had
Yeah.
and presented information that was false, that you get sanctioned. You get
Yeah.
sanctioned, and you get sanctioned. That means potentially you can have your license pulled, but you have to pay big fees. I think there was a firm that had to pay $100,000 in fees. So again, going back to it's a super powerful tool that's going to get better and better, but
Right.
it's also very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, or you take it at
Right.
face value. But it's going to change. It's going to change M&A. The M&A world, which was 5 months of due diligence, is now compressed to 5 weeks.
Right.
But what that means, though, is you can go through a lot more deals. The integration work, unless you've set your portcos up to absorb those, that's going
Yeah.
to be your bottleneck. So
Yeah.
you can't just say, well, now we'll do 10 acquisitions a year instead of two. Great.
Right.
Is your port card's got to be able to absorb those.
Okay. Yeah. And interpretation too. That's the other big point that I see. So let me take it back on Peast here a little bit. So where do you think the real value shifts come from as firms start to get this right? So the underlying question there is, if everyone adopts this, what makes your firm different? What do you think the big
Yeah.
peak points are?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. We have a methodology we went through it with all of our portcos. The first question is, are you AI defensible, or can you become AI defensible?
Right.
If you're not AI defensible and you can't become AI defensible, becoming more efficient is great, but if it all becomes a commodity, so what? Right? I mean, then you have to be afraid of people coming from left field. You don't have to worry, you got to worry about people coming from above, below, sideways. But what's different with AI is, for the first time, you might be able to bundle three or four services together that would never have been able to bundle before, that now AI would allow it. And if you have a competitor come in and go, oh, suddenly we're going to offer all four services to your customer base, you may get wiped out. So our first thing is, are you AI defensible, or can you be? If you're AI defensible, let's make that bigger, and AI will
Right.
help you accelerate it. If you can become, let's become as soon as we can. If you're not AI defensible, then our next question is, how much runway do you have? Is
Right.
it a year? Is it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? That tells you how long you have to decide what you're going to do with that asset. But I believe businesses that are not AI defensible are on a fuse. That yeah, and
Mm.
and I used to think, we've got Tesla here in Austin, Texas. I was invited to the Tesla facility. I used to think the robot side of things was like, well, that's 20 years away, but the digital side is here today. I think the robotic side is about 18 months behind the digital side.
Yep.
It's coming. All of this stuff is coming, and you have to plan for it. But if you're AI defensible, the best way to be AI defensible is to have proprietary data. Once you
Yep.
do that and you build that up, now you've got a very, very valuable asset. And frankly, I think AI will allow you to go take on adjacent and tangential markets and grow your businesses substantially. And the businesses that don't do this, or aren't on this curve, the ones that are will roll up huge swaths of the market, right? Because once you
Right.
become powerful enough, then you're getting stronger, they're getting weaker. You're bidding on their company until they have to sell, and then you're only competing with other AI companies. And I think there's going to be a massive change, and that, I think, from the fund level, that's very exciting for the future. I think
Yeah.
for the funds that have digital assets, they're going through the pain of reformulating the digital assets they have. Because if you have digital assets that are no longer competitive, that's a painful process.
Yeah.
We've seen that in several marketplaces right now. We've seen some big examples of that.
Yeah. The SaaS apocalypse. If you're not in a regulated industry, you got problems.
Yeah,
I
and if you have proprietary data, though, you can be SaaS all day long. If you have proprietary
yeah.
data, or you are so embedded in your clients that you're protected. But yeah, if you're just helping move data, that's you're going to have, I think, problems.
Yeah. It's interesting you say proprietary data because I almost see it that every potential data stream is proprietary data now, because of the computing ability and the ability to move workflows through very, very quickly. I think there's going to be a bit of a creativity explosion in mining sources of data for business insights that nobody has ever thought of before. And they don't necessarily have to own the data. They just
I,
have to.
I think there is some of that. When I say that, let's talk about like an environmental data. Let's say you've been an environmental software company, you've been around for 10 years. It's a company we own, and
Yep.
it's got millions and millions of records. Those records are used to formulate environmental policy, regulatory reporting, et cetera. No one company, they're getting their data from all those companies. That's You can't replicate that 10 years of history that you've built up.
Yep.
And AI allows you to build it faster and faster and faster. That's what I mean by proprietary data. That is not
Right.
in the public domain. Nobody else
Right.
has it. If you want to come to us, we now are one of two that can do this worldwide. And I
Yep.
think what means is you get stronger and stronger and stronger because you can't even compete because you'd have to go to these companies and say, switch to me, but I still have to go buy my data from our company to do it, right? That makes no
Right.
economic sense. So you're always looking for, can you develop proprietary data that nobody else has in the marketplace? Beyond that, the data that's out in the marketplace, I agree with you. That's why I think there's going to be an explosion in services and markets, because I
Right.
think you're going to start culling through all this data and you're going to find, oh, there are all these revenue streams or whatever. And then think about it. You can have specialized medicine, right? Like when you go in and you get your medicine. I take medicine because I'm a little bit older now. But the medicine I take X and I take it. Well, I might get medicine that's actually, formulated specifically for me, right? That
Yep.
that I think that's where we're going to be ahead. And that's why I think there's going to be an explosion of services and products and everything. But at its
Yep.
core, if you're AI, you're AI forward, not speed, but actually in real
Yep.
muscle, you'll be able to take advantage of that. And
Yeah.
everybody sees it. That's where so much money's coming in. But now it's an execution game of who can do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just because you spend money doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. And if you pick
Right.
the wrong tools or the wrong products or the wrong consultants, wrong people, you can spend a lot of money and still do it wrong. I see people hire all kinds of people with the great intent, but they don't. I don't think they're
Yeah.
going to be successful.
Yeah, I've been talking to a fund recently, that was, impact investing, sustainable kind of stuff, a lot of green energy, that sort of thing. Um, and the biggest pain that they had up to this point was doing the reporting on that side of the investments. And almost overnight, it dawned on them, wait a second, we have this universe of data that we just did basically for marketing purposes that now we can look into for actual business purposes, which,
Yeah.
it was like a revelation to them where, what was the worst part of their job can all of a sudden be, the most, they can just pull value out of it left, right, and center, which it lines up exactly what you're saying with the history of taking down data points.
Yeah, and I think because as AI gets more powerful, we all of our financial analysis, board reporting, et cetera, is now done by AI. We quiz it, we make sure we understand it,
Yeah.
but it gives you presentation and insights that before our business intelligence unit would have spent who knows how much time trying to look for, that we haven't seen before, and I think that's just going to continue to expand. And so I
Right.
do think that's why I think at a macro level, there'll be so much job creation. It's it's the it's the bridge from where we are to getting there that may cause some dislocations for some people. I
Right.
also think it'll make some firms and some people very, very wealthy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So let's sort of get close to wrapping up here. If you were walking into the firm that you're working with today, firms that you're working with today, and they were still in the deer in headlights, cursor blanking on the page phase, they didn't know what to do, where would you tell them to start? What would be the first workflow? And then, how would you say, okay, this is day zero. We're going to start today. We should start here. Don't make these mistakes. And this is how we'll build internally to make sure everybody buys into it.
Yeah, I actually have a presentation I do on this, and I start one step before where you started, which is I come in because we have a lot of founder-led companies, or we have other funds that I'm introduced to, or whatever. I come in with are you AI defensible or can you become AI defensible? And then we have
Right.
and then you look at the market and you can have a debate about the market or whatever else. Because first of all, if you can get them to like AI is the future, we must. Okay,
Right.
now you're in execution mode. Okay, we agree
Okay.
we need to do something now. We execute. Again, a holistic approach. I'm not on the R&D side, so that's a separate conversation. On the lead to cash side, on the digital side, we do an assessment from lead to cash, and it doesn't take very long. High level assessment of where you are in terms of data quality processes, et cetera. And then you peel back the onion because unfortunately, understanding your current processes and the way they work and where the anomalies are is step one. Then you can put AI on, and it's not AI as a misnomer because it's kind of like this massive thing. You can use AI at various points, and you ultimately, you probably have 20 AI projects going to fix things, but they're all part of a unified plan that you're
Yep.
working on. So it all fits together, and there's change management, there's organizational change, there's changes in job descriptions. We have a whole methodology that we're using. So when we walk into a portfolio company, we're walking them through this methodology because we want them to get on our side. If it works well, we want as the founder, CEO, or the CEO to go from I'm presenting to them to where he's moved around the desk and he's on my side and he's got his hand in my back on you got to go faster. And I'm like, look,
Right.
let's, now you're in with me, but let's talk about what mechanically we can do and how we can do it. And then when I go to the funds and present to them, what I found was, when I started doing this, into last year or something, a lot of skepticism. Now I
Yep.
find I walk in the door and the people are like, we definitely want to do something. Tell us your
What
pitch.
to do?
Tell us how to do it, and why is your approach better than someone else's, et cetera. By the way, I never say, if somebody comes up with a better approach, we'll plagiarize that and we'll use their approach. But here's what we're
Yep.
doing, and we've had some success with it, and they're hungry to do it.
Right.
What happens now, 6 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, getting people to pull the trigger. Now, to some degree, you're like, whoa, 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 because they got other consultants that come in that
Yep.
want them to leapfrog a bunch of foundational stuff they need to do, and I'm
Hmm.
like, you're going to pay a price. You're going to pay a
Yep.
price for doing that because you
Yep.
still have to do the foundational work. And then I think on the revenue side, everyone talks about revenue. We didn't talk about it here today. There are opportunities to drive more revenue.
Right.
And certainly we want to drive more revenue, but again, just like on the M&A side, just because you can do 25 deals, if your report code can't absorb 25 deals, so what? I mean, now you're going to
Yep.
run them as a confederation until you're ready to consolidate them. It's a sequencing event, and it's gone from skepticism, we don't want to meet with you, to
Yep.
can we schedule a meeting sooner?
Uh,
Or, can you do this? And I'm
Yep.
lucky because we have proof points, so you can go back and you can show proof points. Everybody's out there pitching this stuff. It's
Yep.
people that have actually done it, or I think the the value in the market today.
Right. Right. So the revenue point is a good one, and I think we can finish on that. So here's a more pointed question. Uh, what can you point to one CFO function or revenue, just one function that you think will become continuous that currently is very much backwards facing traditional accountant, where you're constantly monitoring it, you're constantly approving it. What do you think the one big workflow will be?
Yeah, well, if you give me a 5 year time horizon, I think the accounting FP&A function. I think as those models compress, you're getting real time feedback. Now, it doesn't mean still needs to be verified and whatever. So you
Yep.
can't. It's not like Star Trek, like it's telling me and it's 100% accurate. But you're going to move to the front of the funnel, and your audits. You're still going to do audits, but your audits are going to be a verification of your processes and data that everybody already has, right?
Yeah.
So I think I
Continuously
think
audited. Yeah.
I think and I think what's going to happen, and when I use the CFO function, sometimes people get upset, but there's going to be an analytical function. I think it's going to be the CFO. In our companies, it is, but there's going to be an analytical function that's going to be in your company, and it's going to do the analytics for the entire company. You're
Right.
not going to have analytics in different departments, whatever. It's going to be one unit. And
Right.
then the departments become what's your core function? If you're sales, your sales, that's meeting with people, talking to people. That's going to be out there. If you're
Yep.
marketing, it's coming up with marketing plans, marketing ideas. It's the brainstorming part that's going to be there. That's where I think it is. So the functions are going to become much more focused on where they are. I think the CFO, if you have the right skill set, becomes what they've always been. They cut across the organization as a coordination layer, control layer. Is this all working, right? Is this
Right.
all working? Even in a Star Trek world, they had Scotty who was down there. The machine didn't work all by with nobody else. People
Right.
have to monitor the machine, look at the machine, make sure it's working correctly. I think that's where the CFO goes. And then I think strategically, my analogy is I think the CFO becomes Mr. Spock and Scotty in a company because they're going to spend half their time up on the bridge looking out at the horizon talking strategically, and the other half is how does the machine work, and because of the way the machine works, what can we take advantage of? And I think for the
Right.
companies that do this correctly, the opportunities for growth are extraordinary, and I think
Agreed.
it'll make more millionaires, more multimillionaires in a short period of time. And I think it's a
Agreed.
super exciting time to be here. I think the current crop of companies making that transition is going to take time. So the sooner you start, the better.
Yep.
This isn't like an ERP implementation where it's going to take 10 years for ERPs to be, it's coming fast and furious. So you've got to be,
Right.
and getting the right partners to partner with. I mean, if you know, choose, I could give you, I've got a laundry list of how you choose the right partners. But if you choose the wrong partner, just like if you choose the wrong spouse,
Right.
life is difficult.
Right, right. That's something my wife knows a little bit about. So I think we're I think we're good to leave it there, Brad. Thank you again. And outside of the discussions on camera, I've loved our chat. So I'd love to keep it up.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Thanks so much.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.